Welcome CSC 121 W1. I'm going to go over the solution or one of the solutions to our challenge 2, which is the one where if you put in the stop for the earned points rather than just the possible points, it'll stop your program and give you a final grade. And this one is actually one that a student was working on, and I was going to do a recording just for them, which I do sometimes, and I put it in a private playlist and I just give a link that you could click on, but I figured everyone could probably get something out of this, especially if you got stuck at some point. And for this one, let's just look at where we're at here. I think it's still not working, so I'm going to run it and see what happens, and it starts, so it's starting even though there's parentheses here that we should get rid of. There's no reason to have it looks like the parentheses were left there after there was an int in front of them. So we could get rid of these. I'm surprised it still runs with the parentheses, but it does. So we'll put in 10, and then I'll put in 9, and we get an error. So first of all, let me get rid of these because we don't need those, although that's not the error. The error is saying line 21. It's saying down here. So it's having an issue adding up things, and line 21, it's having a problem with the EP total. And it's in here where it's actually doing that. So it's a math thing, and it's probably like a string and an integer, which it says right here. Type error, unsupported operand for plus. So you can't add an integer and a string. Well, where is it adding an integer and a string? Well, it's doing it down here. So it's with the EP. So the problem is here so far. It's getting started okay. We have the if, and it's saying if equals stop, and then what happens? Then it's doing another input here, which we don't need. This one should actually be, for people who've done this should do the same thing. It should actually just take away, so we can minus the number of assignments even if we do that. So it's not adding up assignments. So we can put that in there. So it does that at the end. And basically what should happen is, if we think of what's happening here, it's letting us put in a 10. So it's doing this line. Oh, we still have a parentheses up there. So it's letting us put in the 10. And so it's not going to stop. So it's moving along to the else, and then it's converting it to an integer, so it's making that a 10. That's why that one works down here, because the PP is now converted to an integer, and it's now being added up. So that's working. Okay, so we got to that point. Then we came to here, and we entered 9. And that was fine, and then we came here, and it said if EP equals stop. And we didn't put in stop, so it's going to ignore that and keep moving on. And then it got to here, and it tried to do that, and it got to here, and it didn't like having the EP in there. So it was trying to add a string in there. So we have to make sure that we convert it back to an integer if we're going to do any math with it. Just like we did here. We did the same thing here with this one. So once it worked, we basically had to convert it to an integer. So once we're not putting in stop, we're saying, okay, make sure it's a number so we could do math for it. We have to do the same thing here. So that's where the else comes in. So if I put in else and do that, notice how it goes back here to the margin. Now this is a nested condition, remember, because we have an if else, but within this else, it's doing a couple things. It's saying, okay, change this to an integer, then it's running our second input. We didn't need a third. We're running our second input, so as long as we're moving along here, we're converting that to an integer, and then we're doing our second input, and then it's saying, oh, by the way, if we do this, so it's kind of doing what we did here, except it's doing it kind of a level in. So after we move along and do this, it's checking it again. Now there could be other ways to do this, but this is a nested conditional, so we're doing it this way, and that's kind of the way I did it as well from what we know. But now as we're checking this, if it says stop, it's going to break it. Now that's fine, but what's going to happen if we put in a number? Well, if we put in a number, we now have to convert EP to an integer, just like we did here, just like we did with the PP. So we have to go here and put EP equals int EP. So we have to convert it to an integer, just like we did here. And I guess I don't need the spaces in there. So that's what we have to do. And anything else that we have to do here? I'm not sure. We may not have to do anything else. Now, we don't want to keep this in the if-else because that's basically after everything. That's basically, it's still part of the loop. It's still part of the while true loop. It's not outside the loop, but it's still adding up everything within each cycle of the loop that's going through here. So this allows it to do math now. So now it should move along and add this up. So let's see what happens here. We'll put in 10. We'll put in 9, and it keeps going on. And then we put in 10, And then here, oh, I think I'm going to stop here. Now, instead of doing the possible points, we're putting stop here. Let's see if this works. And it works. I think it says you've earned 90% for one assignment, which is an A. Now, is it adding up the points correctly? You could go down here and just see what it's doing. Now, I think it is. Now, why do you know it's doing that? Well, because we're still getting an A. If it added up to 10 again, that would be 9 out of 20, and we wouldn't have gotten an A. Our total wouldn't have came up to an A. So we're still getting the right points here, and we could do a couple more just to double check. But if we open these up so we print out the totals, then we'll know that our totals should be still, even when we stop here, our total should be 10 and 9. So it shouldn't add up this one here. And I think when I did mine, I think I put in a 0, a PP equals 0, but I guess I didn't have to do that. I put in, when I did mine, I put in like PP equals 0 so that it didn't add up anything else, but apparently it doesn't. So I guess I didn't need that. So I had an extra line of code that I didn't need in mine. Unless I did it different, I'd have to double check. But this seems to be working. Let's try it one more time. And let's put in a 10 and a 9 and a 10 and a 9, a 10 and a 9. And then for the fourth one, I'm going to put in a 10, and then I'm going to be like, oh, wait a minute, I changed my mind. I don't want to do this one. And we'll put in stop. So what should happen is we should get 3 assignments, A1, A2, A3. A4 shouldn't count, and we should get 30 possible points, and we should get 3 times 9, 27 points for the earned points. So that's what should happen. Let's see. And we got 30, 27 for 3 assignments. So it's working. So I didn't even need to put in PP equals 0, anything like that. That works. Doesn't seem to add any more PPs even when you add that in there. Because we did enter it a 4th time, why did that not get added in there? I'll have to look at it later after the video. But anyway, I just wanted to point that out. So for anybody working on this, this is the nested conditional, and you have to convert the EP to an integer. You have to take it as a string first so you could put in stop. Because if you try to put int and then put in stop, you're going to get an error. So you have to leave this open as not being an int conversion to start. You have to do the int conversion after you're sure that you're not putting in stop anymore. So as long as it's not stop, then you can convert it to an int, then it'll keep going, and that works. So this seems to work for that. So for anybody who did this way, this seems to work. If anybody had any different ways, I'll check it out. I'll see if anybody has anything different. I'll share it if I need to. But one person was having some issues with this. Maybe other people were having issues as well. Hopefully this helps you out a little bit. That's what the challenge that actually lets you put in a stop for the earn points. Keep in mind there's other issues to deal with. What if you put stop at the beginning? We'd have a problem. What if you put in something else that's wrong? What if you put in gibberish here? You're going to get an error. Now, could you do something about that? You could, to make sure we're not putting something like that in there, because we're only allowing stop. But we could do something about that if we need to, and we always can. It's just right now we're kind of working with what we know. So hopefully this helps. Check this out if you struggled with that. But I wanted you to start thinking through it yourself without just watching the video, but hopefully this helps a little bit.